welcome to USMNT Weekly on the Total Soccer Show. It is your one-stop shop for all things men's national team. On this episode, we're looking at key performers on the team right now. We're looking ahead to the November window, and we're putting a spotlight right on Mr. Chris Richards. My name's Ryan Bailey. Join me today. Hello, Taylor Rockwell. How are you?
I am okay, I think. Before we started recording, I got a very bad bloody nose, and I now have an increasingly large number of crows outside my window. There was one when we started. There are now 5 on the branch.
Oh, that's a good sign. Don't
Yeah, I'm
worry.
a little
That's
concerned.
always a positive thing.
Some sort of witch's curse has happened, and I don't know what to do about it.
Did you find a witch's hat anywhere, and have you been wearing it?
Here's what... Yes, exactly. That's the problem. It just makes me want the hat more, Ryan. I do feel like Graham and I did the 101 recently about Spurs and about, like, Spursy. And between that episode and the Van de Ven run in the Champions League this week, maybe that curse has rebounded, and now I'm in some trouble.
Oh, boy. Just don't ask what the hat's made of. Graham Ruffin, hello, how are you?
Hello, Ryan Bailey. Yeah, I am not yet being haunted by the ghost of Daniel Levy, but I am in a windowless room, so maybe all the crows are surrounding this room and I just haven't opened the door yet. So we'll wait and see on that front.
Wow, a windowless room. Your office has no windows? Or did you just
Well, it
put
does
TV
have a
over
window,
it?
but I've got an acoustic curtain that makes sure I can't see outside, which is, that's just for the best, for everyone concerned.
He's speaking metaphorically. He's talking about where he keeps his emotions.
That's right, yeah.
I see.
Glass case.
Ryan, there's a puckering at the back of the hat. I'm not sure what that's about.
Joe Lowry, how are you?
I'm great, guys. This has been one of the more delightful, apologies to your nose, Taylor, pre-recording sessions that we've had in quite some time. Taylor, also, though, if you do feel a searing pain on your left elbow here, don't worry, it's all part of the hex. So just don't give it a second thought.
Joe, what's that bearded voodoo doll that you seem to have? And why are you
What?
poking
No,
your
I meant
needles?
to put that away. Didn't think you could see that. My fault.
There you go. Thank you very much, guys. Apologies to anyone who hasn't seen what we do in the shadows, and maybe it's best you didn't catch on to that riff. Before we get to USMNT Weekly, patreon.com/Total Soccer Show is the best way to support us. You'll get bonus episodes, bonus video, and access to our Discord server. All of the cool kids are hanging out in our Discord server. Patreon.com/Total Soccer Show, Joe.
You can see a picture of Taylor bloodied and bruised. He said it happened before recording. We all know Ryan reached through the screen and just slapped him upside the nose. That's what really happened. I give you the real story. Taylor gave you the polite.
I said Paul McCartney
retelling.
wasn't the best Beatle, and Ryan
That's all it
punched
took.
through the computer.
We've been through this before. He was the best one in Wings and the Beatles. We're all agreed. Okay?
All of us.
Chicken wings.
Oh, man. Remember
That's
when
right.
he told Michael Jackson
Nailed
that
it.
the real money was in owning the masters of recordings, and Michael Jackson was like, interesting, and then outbid him for the Beatles masters? That's outstanding.
What's the most valuable music I can buy? Oh, yours? Cool.
Thanks for the tip, bro.
Whoopsies.
Very good. On that note, why don't we go to the best USMNT performers from the past round of games? Joe, would you like to kick us off? Who's been on your radar over the weekend? And we should also probably note that in the Champions League on Tuesday, at the very least,
Yeah.
we had a couple of American goal scorers, did we not?
Yeah, both of the top 2 strikers in the U.S. pool bagged goals in the Champions League earlier this week. You had Folarin Balogun with a very classic Folarin Balogun goal where he plays it centrally and then spins off, goes in behind, and then hits a really nice near post finish with his left foot. And then Pepe makes great contact on a sort of loose ball in the box and just puts his right foot through that ball. And it's a lovely late goal for PSV. Enjoyable moments, both. I did not go with either of those players for my pick for this week's show. I also didn't go with a player who I think had the best performance. I just went with the player that I thought was interesting and I think would be an interesting one to talk about. And that's Leonard Maloney. Now, listener, don't worry. I have not transformed into Taylor Rockwell, although I do suffer from frequent nosebleeds. So maybe there is something there, Taylor. I don't know if we're merging. I don't know what's happening. I thought I had a handle on the hex. I'm realizing now that I don't.
Wow.
Leonard Maloney
Rebound.
started this season for Mainz playing in the midfield and played quite a bit of minutes in central midfield. More recently, he has moved back into the back line. Now, this is not an entirely new role for him, but he's played as the central center back in a back 3 in both of Mainz's last 2 games. Most recently, that came in a 1-1 draw with Werder Bremen. This was on Saturday. Mainz, not a good team. They needed points. They got a point. Solid-ish result for them. The reason why I think Maloney's an interesting one to watch is because, as we talked about last week, the center back pool is still not super clear for the U.S., or at least it's clear in that it's quite mediocre outside of Chris Richards at the moment. I think anybody with a pulse who's playing high-ish level minutes as a center back should be evaluated by Pochettino and his coaching staff right now. And we're about to get a USMNT roster later this week. It's probably going to happen tomorrow or whenever the least convenient time for us is, based off of when we're recording. I don't know if Leonard Maloney's going to be on that roster, but it's not impossible that he is. And I thought he had a pretty solid performance in this game against Werder Bremen. His opposite in this game for most of the match was Victor Boniface, who was a real big boy adult Bundesliga striker. And Maloney acquitted himself pretty well. He was not amazing in this game, which is to say he literally never passes the ball forward. He cannot progress the ball, certainly not on the ground. At the very least, he's not being asked to do it, but I've never seen him consistently progress the ball regardless of club, and we haven't really seen that for the national team either. But defensively in this game, he was quite good. He was strong against Boniface. He had some nice set-piece moments as well. He did not get bodied off the ball in basically any phase, and he was the one doing more of the bodying. I think the U.S. need more adults, or at least this is the kind of profile, like the adult profile, that Pochettino should be considering at the very least for the U.S. in center back spot. I think Maloney has very clear weaknesses. There's no doubt about that. I'm still not passionate about him as a player, and I don't think it's a good situation for the U.S. should he be starting for them on a regular basis. But if you give me the Miles Robinson that we saw in the last window, especially in that second game against Australia, and if you factor in how much Chris Richards has looked... He's looked a little bit off the pace playing in the middle of that back three compared to the right-sided spot in that back three that he plays for Palace when the U.S. do use three center backs. I think Maloney's an interesting guy to watch. I know, Taylor, you've been sort of on this for a little while. He has just such blinding weaknesses, but the strengths maybe are bigger strengths than most of the other non-Richards or Ream center backs in the pool have right now.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I've been interested in Leonard Maloney, because it felt to me like he does a lot of the defensive job really well, dating back to Heidenheim, somewhat with Mainz. I'm glad to see he's playing this weekend. I feel like every time I check on him, he is on the bench and unused. But it felt to me like he does a good job of like reading the 1v1s, of making those tackles. He's good in the air, but to Joe's point, not particularly good with the passing forward. And so that felt to me like a player that maybe you experiment with at center back. So I'm excited to hear what I'm hearing from Joe is that Leonard Maloney should definitely be called into U.S. camp.
Well, he's got a
and
pulse.
should probably start every single game.
He's got a pulse. As we've learned now, that's part of the criteria. I'm now envisaging Poch doing that test along with the eye test, right? Eye test,
left
pulse
eye dominant.
Test.
Pulse.
Oh,
Okay.
Tim Ream, unlucky for you, no pulse. Is that a bit too dark?
No zombies allowed, basically.
Yeah.
And to be clear on Maloney, I would still rather give Noki Banks minutes for the U.S. men's national team. He did start again this past weekend. He had a better performance overall than he did certainly against Leipzig. This last game was against Dortmund. I would still rather give Banks those minutes. But if you're looking for someone who you can feel somewhat confident about providing a defensive floor that's higher, maybe than some of these other guys, Maloney might be that player. So I think people can tell I'm not fully convinced here. But the U.S. needs options, and the World Cup is getting closer and closer, and I don't think anybody should be convinced or pleased with most of the options that Pochettino has tried before. Maloney has not been called up by Pochettino. Maybe there's something there. Maybe.
Now, the reason why I was nervous about what Joe was saying with his introduction is because I thought once again we were going to have the same player somehow, because Joe started to set the table for like a less heralded player who isn't necessarily having like a breakthrough season or even a breakthrough weekend, but still maybe deserves a look and is playing in the Bundesliga? Because I thought you were going with Christopher Lund Hansen.
There it
last
is.
we saw him, he was Christopher Lund. He seems to go by Christopher Lund Hansen. Hansen is what you'll see him written as in the lineups and such.
Like
but he
Alan
has started...
Hansen? He's just added that, like, it was between Alan Hansen or Christopher Lund Van Dijk, because he just added the name of, like, a world-class defender to try and, like, when he got married.
It's his favourite band of three brothers.
That's the one.
Sure.
Yeah.
He's the fourth. That's what we don't know about him. Exactly. There was the three. He chose not to go
like
the
that
musical
bit,
route.
actually.
He went the professional footballer route, but he's finally chosen to embrace it, albeit spelling it differently.
So hot right now. That's Han Sol. That was close.
It's fine. I'll let it slide. But Christopher Lund, last we saw, was playing for, I think, Parma? Cremonense? In Serie B. But is now with FC Köln on loan, who have had a strong enough start to the season so far. They get a 4-1 win over Hamburg this weekend. And he started 7 of 9. He's played in 8 matches so far this season. Has been playing as a left wing back or left back for this Köln team, usually a left wing back. His attacking statistics are not anything to write home about necessarily. I don't believe he has an assist this season. I don't think he's created a particularly large number of chances, but he tends to do the defensive side of things very, very well, and then it tends to be involved in the attack. He's usually like the pass for the pass for the pass that sets up the assist, but he is involved in the attack, but is doing the defensive work, and it makes me wonder if maybe he deserves a look as a left back or maybe a left center back. I'm just trying everything here. But if you've got a left-footed guy who's a good defender, who's getting minutes regularly in the Bundesliga, part of me wonders, like, could you try him there? But that is yet another experiment at a time when we've talked previously about not wanting to see as much experimentation. But maybe we just throw that out the window, and we have Maloney and Christopher Lund Hensen starting as our two center backs in the next round of friendlies.
Solved.
Graham
Who
loves
says
it.
no, Graham?
That's the noise I'm hearing.
Graham doesn't say no. Graham also... Go ahead,
Because in
Taylor.
reality, I think it is Jedi Robinson, if he's healthy. That's a big if at this point. But if it's not Jedi, it seems to be Max Arfston. That seems to
Totally.
be the guy that Pochettino likes. And I'm not really sure if I'm at a point where I want like someone to challenge Max Arfston, or if we need to see a third option there just in case. I think that could be Lund, given where he's playing and what he's been doing. But I do think having a player who's getting consistent minutes in the Bundesliga, albeit not for Bayern or the like, but still getting minutes maybe deserves a look and to see what he can do in camp and how responsive he is to training and instruction.
Yeah, and Jedi Robinson will almost certainly be out for this upcoming window with injury. He's still in a pretty tough spot on that front.
That's becoming a concern.
It is, yeah, very much so. There is a roster spot open, I suppose, is the point off the back of that. There's an opportunity here for Lund. He's also a player that Pochettino has called in before. So Pochettino at least knows who he is, where there's no guarantee with Maloney that Poch actually knows Maloney or rates him in any way. We know that Lund is somewhere on the horizon when Pochettino's out there staring at the, off the back deck or whatever in his home in Atlanta. Probably doesn't live in Atlanta. But I do think that is at least a vague possibility, and I think Lund is a fine, if uninspiring, performer for the U.S. when needed.
Hang on. Where do we think Poch does live?
Yep.
I think he lives in Spain somewhere, don't you think?
He lives on the roof of the Spurs stadium like the Hunchback of Notre Dame, just waiting for them to call him back down.
Biding his time.
Next to the Cockle.
It's Hunchback of Notre Dame, but then he also goes Phantom style and wears a half mask as well, just to really mix his genres. I'm going to go random. I like the idea of Poch just hanging out in Jacksonville. Why not? Florida, but you got some water. You can throw Molotov cocktails whenever you want to. That's what I led to believe is a staple of Jacksonville.
When he was getting hired, when they were going through that process, he lived in Barcelona. But I don't know if he still does.
Boring.
Yeah, sorry, guys.
Grim, what obscure Bundesliga player are you going to talk about today?
Come on.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to talk about a current Bundesliga player, but a former Bundesliga player, and actually someone who may possibly start for the US
All right,
at the
calm
World
down,
Cup
Graham.
in the
You think you're
World
better
Cup
than us?
next year.
All right, we get it.
I am going to focus on Weston McKennie, not necessarily because he was the best US performer over the weekend, but he was possibly the most interesting, or his situation is definitely one of the most interesting right now.
All right, so
because-
hang on.
So we're over 3.
USMNT standout performers.
Every time I put in the Slack, we should do the USMNT standout performer segment. I'm just peeling back the curtain. Standout doesn't have to mean best performer. Ryan, you're the only one who takes it as best performer. None of the rest of us take it that way.
I'm quite happy to do the best performer. We can just clip up my Tyler Adams bit from Monday's Weekend Review, and I can sit back right now and we can just play that. Or I can talk about Weston McKennie for
it's all
10
right.
minutes. Okay, I'll talk about Weston McKennie. So his landscape has shifted quite a bit in the last week, right? With Igor Tudor being fired, Luciano Spalletti being hired in his place, complete with his giant Napoli tattoo on his arm. Of course, he was Italy manager most recently. That did not go so well for him. But for Spalletti, his ethos, as we all know, is like energy, intensity. He famously had that thesis at Napoli about how soccer no longer has systems and positions, and it's about areas on the pitch and how you exploit those areas. I think the term for that is relationism. I think that's what people call that in like the soccer world. He's all about that. And why I'm bringing that up is because I think Weston McKennie is already becoming like a case study for what Luciano Spalletti wants from this Juve team. He started both games that Juve have played under Spalletti, and on paper he's played 2 different roles. So against Cremonese, he was one of the dual number 10s on paper, and then against Sporting in the Champions League, he was a right wing back. But watching those 2 games, and I watched the Sporting Juve game this morning in full, in terms of the area of the pitch Weston McKennie was occupying, it was remarkably similar. I will say against Sporting, when he was meant to be the right wing back, he had a kind of like wider starting position, meaning he would be wider a lot of the time when Juve were building from the back, and they're doing some interesting stuff with that. Cope miners, you'll remember him as an attacking midfielder last season, is playing as a centre-back for Juve under Spalletti, which is wild. But basically, he's looked at their squad and said, we have nobody to build out from the back, let's go and get our best ball player, and he's put him in the back three, and that's Cope Miners. So Juve are doing much more in that regard. Wes McKennie, when he's as the right wing-back, has a wider starting position. But then he was still coming inside a lot and looking for the ball in the half spaces, and it was similar against Cremonese as well. It's not such a central position, even when he is one of the dual number 10s. He's not like a number 8, and it sounds like we will never see him there for Spalletti, because this was his quote after the weekend. McKennie is very good at putting himself about more or less everywhere. He can both defend and attack, allowing Conceição to open up a bit more. There are many different solutions for him, but he struggles more in the centre of midfield. So I don't think we're going to see him as like a deep-lying midfielder or a metronome or rhythm builder or whatever we decided to call that these days. But it does seem like he is someone, I called it wrong, I said, like, looking at the pattern of McKennie's career to date, he'll be out of the team and then he'll work his way back in. Spalletti seems to like him. There's another quote here. McKennie is excellent at crashing into everything from all sides. He seems to like his energy, maybe not so much his like footballing ability. But I just find it really interesting to watch what his role is going to be for this team moving forward. And it seems to be on that kind of that right side, but with the freedom to drift inside and get into that kind of like attacking right half space.
Can I make a prediction? Also, Graham, those are delightful quotes from Spalletti. Thank you for gathering those out from the quote field. I really did enjoy that. My prediction is that your general flow of how you thought the McKennie-Spalletti thing was going to go will still happen, just in a different way. So here's my prediction. Spalletti already likes McKennie. You've said that well. You've illustrated it well. He's giving him minutes. That's all very clear. I think Spalletti will eventually come around to Weston McKennie as more of a central midfielder in all phases. It's just going to take time. And that's the version of him coming back into the manager's good graces, is actually just him getting brought back into central midfield. I just think McKennie, everybody goes through this cycle with Weston McKennie. We talk about this all the time in one form or another, where eventually you think, you start out by thinking, this guy, all he's good for is, what did he say, clattering into things from all sides?
Crashing into everything from all sides.
That's hilarious. That's such a good quote. You go from that being a perspective of Weston McKennie to thinking, this guy actually pulls out some nice little flicks and tricks, and it's probably a bit better in the middle than we thought. And then you go from that to, I think we need Weston McKennie in central midfield. I don't know when, I don't know how, I don't know why. It's going to happen. At some point, Spalletti's going to go from he's only good for thumping into big lads from everywhere and all around at once to we're going to play through McKennie every now and then. I think it's going to happen.
In my ongoing quest to understand the career of Weston McKennie, here's my new theory. What if he just lies to every incoming manager and just is like, I'm a goalie? And the manager doesn't know, so they put him in goal. And then slowly they're like, wait a minute, you're a midfielder. And then this time he's like, I'm a right wing back. And then they put him there, and then slowly he migrates into midfield. Like, maybe he's just a trickster. Is that possible, Graham?
No, that's possible.
I think so, yeah. I think, given his food takes, I think that's a possibility that he has the same ethos towards his professional football career as well.
Is a sincere version of that, Taylor, that he does a lot of different things in training and plays in different positions in small games and stuff and shows a bit more versatility? That could be what's going on.
Yeah, I think so. And then I think to points already made and points made historically, I think he also shows maybe like that his first touch isn't always ideal, and maybe he isn't as like secure or careful on the ball in those training sessions. And so maybe that's where coaches think, maybe I don't want him as like the last man centrally on the ball. Maybe I want other people around him, or maybe I want him kind of taking risks further away from the heart of the goal.
Fair enough. There we go. There are 3 USMNT standout performers from the weekend. As we all know, that doesn't mean the best, because when the Oscars give out Outstanding Performance Awards, It's just for ones that stand out for other reasons, not for being the best. There we go.
Yep.
Glad we cleared that up. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're talking about the November window and the players who have the most to gain therein. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to USMNT Weekly. We're going to look ahead to the November window, which is creeping up upon us in, let's say, a couple of weeks. We've got, it's the Guay window. We've got the Guays we're facing here. Paraguay on November 15th, followed by Uruguay on Tuesday the 18th.
2 Guays, not 5 Guays.
Yeah, not 5 Guays, just the 2. Just the 2, and a pizza place. It's a very pleasing set of country names. But Graham, would you like to tell us if you have a nominee for a player who has the most to gain in this crucial window?
Yeah, you didn't love my Weston McKennie segment. You're going to love this even less, because I am going to not nominate a single player, but a group of players. So a couple of weeks ago, we went through the lineup. And, well, I mean, it is a single player. I'll get there. But a couple of weeks ago, went through the lineup. I said I thought 9 of the 11 were pretty much nailed on starters for the first game of the World Cup. That leaves a centre-back and a centre-mid. I think those are the two positions with the most to gain. And that could change, right? I'm getting worried about Jedi and how he's still not playing, and now we're in November. And if we get to March and he's like, if this is still the case, I hope it's not. But if it is, like, all of a sudden Max Arfson has the most to prove in that window because we're thinking about him as starting at a World Cup, and then if Balogun was to get an injury, then it's like on Ricardo Pepe to show he can step up. It might already be on Ricardo Pepe. But I think right now, the players, plural, with the most to prove in this November camp are the midfielders who are in line to be the second centre mid. So that is Christian Roldan, Tanner Tessman, Aidan Morris, potentially Johnny Cardoso, who is fit again. I noticed he was on the bench for Atleti in their last game. Still hasn't played since August, so I don't know if he's going to get enough game time in the next, week or so to get a call up, but we'll see. Could be Weston. Poch seems to prefer him higher up, but obviously it's a role in central midfield he's played many times before. Maybe not for Spalletti's Juventus anytime soon. But if he's excellent in the next 2 games, that changes the equation again. So that's where I'm looking at. That seems to me like, I think the centre-back pool is maybe, even though we don't know who that third centre-back is going to be, assuming it's a back 3 and assuming the other 2 are Riemann Richards, it does feel like it's sort of, I know we're talking about Leonard Maloney and Noakai Banks. It does feel like right now it's McKenzie and Robinson for that spot, whereas like midfield it could go in a number of different areas, and It feels like if one player has an outstanding window this month, then maybe they become a lock, at least heading into 2026.
Yeah, Graham, I think that's 100% the right take here. The only thing I will quibble with from center mid over center back is I don't know for sure that we are going to see a back 3 in defense in every game, because let's remember the only times we have seen that back 3 have been against other teams who also play a back 3, and we haven't done our window preview yet, so I can't claim to have taken a deep dive on Uruguay or Paraguay's tactics recently, but I don't know that is absolutely set in stone. But although I suppose, actually, I was just trying to point that out, but that does reinforce your overall point that even if it's 2 center backs, then that makes it more likely that you see somebody else in midfield that you need to evaluate. So I do think center mid is the area with the least clarity. And in this window, we're not going to quite get the clarity that maybe we would want, because we still don't know what Tyler Adams' status is going to be. He comes off against Man City over the weekend with that little knee knock. It doesn't sound like it's a serious issue whatsoever, but Tyler Adams is also at times made of glass. So we don't really know what's going to happen there for him, which means we might not get that very clean data point, I suppose, from this next window of Adams +1. It might be 2 center mids, or even 3 center mids. One of those probably would be McKennie at that point if you are playing with 3. But we don't really know who is going to be the anchor and who's going to be the player around that player. The only other name, though, that I wanted to add, because I think, Graham, you mentioned Cardoso, you mentioned Tessman, you mentioned Roldan, right, I believe?
And Morris as well as the other one.
And Morris, yeah. The only other one I want to add is Yunus Musa, who has sort of been pushed to the side by Atalanta. That doesn't seem like they rate him very highly. He's clearly low in his career right now. This is probably the lowest point of his entire professional career at this stage. I do wonder if we see Yunus Musa called back in. Maybe it's a confidence boost. Maybe it's Pochettino still believing him in one way or another. We know that Poch at one time rated Musa because he forced him into the 11, even back in just over a year ago now, when Musa wasn't playing very good ball. He played him out wide and he scored a goal, Yunus Musa, as we all remembered in that quiz that Ryan had us do the other day. We know that Pochettino has evaluated Musa positively at some point in the past. I'm wondering if we'll do it again, because I still have some Yunus Musa stock. I'm not ready to sell it all. And I just have a hard time believing that he can't scrape together something that puts him at least on level footing with a lot of those guys. Jack McGlynn also, we should note, is injured, so he would be another player that maybe would be in this conversation. But I think, Graham, you've narrowed down the pool really well. I think all of those guys can step up in a big way and have something to prove should they actually step onto that platform.
Good stuff. Joe, who would you like to nominate as your player with the most to gain? You can just pick one if you like.
Okay, I will. I think Graham has nailed it, so I will go somewhere else.
Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
You hear that, Ryan? Nailed it.
I'm making notes.
I will go with Ricardo Pepi, who is back to playing for PSV. He is not, however, back to starting for PSV. He has not started a game for them since the month of September. Newsflash, or November. He started a game in September, came off after about 30 minutes with an injury. He has struggled quite a bit with injury recently in this stage of his career. And he is now buried a little bit on in that number 9 depth chart for PSV. The reality is whoever starts up top for PSV scores goals, which makes it very difficult to unseat that player. We saw it with Luke de Jong. Now we're seeing it with Till. and Pepe's just got to wait for his moment to climb back into the 11. I think Pepe is a player to watch in this window because, one, it seems like he's healthy enough to get called in, which is a refreshing change. And two, because Balogun has been maybe the star and the story from an individual player perspective over the last couple of windows, maybe outside of Cristiano Roldan. Balogun's return to this team and his return to fitness has changed what the U.S. can do because he's a very, very good player. Pepe's also a good player, but he's not Balogun. I don't think he's at that level, and I don't think he is certainly the same style of striker. I'm curious to see what Pochettino makes of Pepe. Does he give him minutes? Does he give more minutes to Haji Wright? Does he call Haji Wright back in? Does he even call Pepe back in? I think Pepe has a chance to really do something in this window because we just haven't seen it. So he's kind of coming from zero, whether that is him performing off the bench, whether that's him getting a game and Balogun getting a game. I don't know what that's going to look like, but Pepe has a chance to reestablish himself in that number 9 pecking order. I would be shocked if it is for that number 1 spot, but injuries happen, questions happen, Pochettino makes weird choices that we wouldn't make. All those things are real, and Pepe finally, now that he's back to health, has a chance to reestablish himself somewhere in that group. He's a guy I think to watch in this next window.
Joe, refresh my memory.
Yeah.
When Pepe was sort of like at his fullest fit and best form,
Sure.
did you still have Balogun ahead of him? Or was there a point when it felt like it was Pepe?
I still had Balogun ahead of him, although I don't want to be disingenuous. I do remember saying on the show that I didn't think there was this huge gap between those two players. I have always rated Balogun a little more highly because I think he's a more well-rounded player. But Pepe, when he's playing and when he's in form, is a good player. Like, you can go into a big game at a World Cup if you don't have Balogun and you do have Pepe, feeling okay, I think, about what you have up top.
Yeah. And I think I would agree. Thank you for that. I also think that, like, when last we saw him, it's November 2024, he's scoring against Jamaica, and it feels like he is like at his most confident level he has been at in terms of his ability, in terms of his overall form. And then there's the injury, and then we haven't seen him in quite some time. And so I think he has a point to prove, even just coming into this camp, having potentially lost that starting spot for PSV, not being where he was for club or for country. Does he come in with a point to prove? Does he come in hungry to show that he should be there and should still be in consideration? Or is he sort of struggling for confidence and ability, and do we see that on display? I think all of that makes for Ricardo Pepe's camp very, very interesting, and what he can do and how he can sort of improve or not, I think is definitely worth keeping an eye on.
Excellent stuff. Taylor, who would you like to pick for your player with the most to gain in this window?
As I may have just shown there, I also had Ricardo Pepe as my number 1, so I will go with my number 2. My number 3 was Serginho Dest, just in case, but I feel like he has less to prove because he's just on the team, but there are still questions I have about him, especially with Jedi likely not being there. But the player I think can make the biggest jump is Noki Banks, who I think will be in this roster. I would hope he will be. Has been playing in the Bundesliga for Augsburg. It hasn't been great. He's, I think, played 90 in 2 of their last 3. They lost both of those. But he did play a lot of minutes when they drew against Köln and won against Wolfsburg. So, there is some positivity there. But
and he was fine against Dortmund, by the way. He was fine. I don't think he had any major oopsies. He certainly did in the previous game against Leipzig. But I think he's acquitted himself maybe a little bit better, Taylor, on balance than you have, but he's obviously not a perfect player.
Yeah. No, he's not. But I think and we're going to talk about Chris Richards later on, but he reminds me of Richards when he's like flirting with breaking through at Crystal Palace, and I think it's that first season he gets like 400 some minutes, but like is in the 11, and then he's not, and then he's a sub, and then he's not for a while, and then he's back in the 11, and it feels like this is Banks breaking through and starting to get consistent starts and consistent minutes, and maybe it's still too soon for him. Maybe he's a 2030 World Cup guy, let's hope. But with the deficiencies in the center back pool that we've talked about at length, there is an opportunity there for somebody who can play left center back to come in and remind us all that if Tim Ream can't go 3 games in a row, that we have a reliable and capable option there. So if he gets some minutes here, I think that's showing us that Poch is experimenting. Even if he's called it a camp, I think it shows that he's being given another opportunity to impress and show that he belongs.
Okay. Just needs to do a Spalletti. Stick McKennie back there. Problem solved.
I mean, give it time.
Yeah, don't give him ideas.
Very good. Let's take one more quick break. When we come back, as noted, we're going to talk all about Chris Richards. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to USMNT Weekly. We welcome your questions, including, but not limited to this one from Igor Diki, who says, I remember the guys saying a couple of years ago that Chris Richards had potential, but was still not USMNT starting material. What has he improved in the past year or two to become a lock starter? Taylor, I put to you that he's become better at soccer. Where do you want to go from there?
That's a start.
This guy's good, man. This guy's good.
I mean, that's why Ryan makes the big bucks and brings in that analysis. But also, like, Ryan is correct. I think that is a huge part of it. He looks more established. He looks much more comfortable. And I think when you are established and comfortable, you back yourself to go out and try to do things you wouldn't otherwise, where if you're just breaking through, if you're Noki Banks, for example, maybe you're keeping your head down a little bit more. Maybe you're not going on a marauding run or trying to step and win a header that maybe you're not going to win. But when you are full of confidence, when you are full of self-belief, when you know you're an established veteran who people look to make a play, you're going to kind of go for it. And that's the thing that I've seen the most from Chris Richards, is that there has been a massive upswing in his confidence on and off the pitch. You look at the way he responds to questions in press conferences and in the mix zone, and there is much more kind of like fight and belief about his responses. I find his responses to be consistently like motivational and heartening in how he talks about challenging for places, challenging for minutes, about the competition, about what Pochettino has done for this team. And it makes me feel heartened about the squad. It makes me feel heartened about him as a leader in that defensive unit. And I think all of that is just veteran experience. It's why you kind of have to bide your time and keep pushing and keep working and keep improving. On the improvement side, I think technically and physically, he is much more capable. And so I think he can then kind of body people off the ball more effectively. But I think he can also read when to try to kind of step and win the ball in 1v1s versus when he's going to shepherd in one direction. I think earlier on with Palace, there are moments when you can see him have some of the physicality that he has now, but you can also see him get knocked around a little bit more, and you can see him bite on moments that he should not be biting on. And I think he reads 1v1 situations much better. Much less frequently, I don't want to say never, and I also want to knock on wood, do I see him just out and out beaten where he kind of dives in and then loses that 1v1. I think he's much more assured in when to make that play. And I think with that in mind, the biggest thing for me is that it seems like he's ironed out the big swings in his game. I look at somebody like Mark McKenzie, by contrast, where I feel like every time I see him for the U.S., there is a moment when I'm just like, why? Why that pass? Why that decision? Why did you go there and do that? And on a like much more senior professional level, that's been the joke about Dayo Upamecano for a long time. I think Sam Tai was the one to introduce me to that Upamecano, if you watch him in a game, every single game, he will make one just baffling decision where he goes for a header he's never going to win. And now the guy he was supposed to be marking is in on goal. Or he's going to fly in for a challenge and concede a penalty. And that's been a lot of defenders for the United States. It has not been Chris Richards, in my mind, in quite some time.
Yeah. I do think he has improved at some things pretty clearly. I think he's gotten better in the air. Taylor, you talked about him getting a bit better at reading things defensively, which leads to him getting dusted less often. Now, he still does get dusted from time to time. You were thinking, when was the last time? I think the last time that we saw for the U.S. was in the U.S.'s last game against Australia, where he just gets absolutely hosed in the second half. He does still have those moments. I think he is, in general, though, quicker to read things defensively, which comes with experience. I think one area that he has improved is attacking set pieces, where he's a monster on those plays now. And I don't know that he was earlier in his career, and that's borne out in just more aerial dominance. You see it in the tape. You see it in the numbers as well. Though I don't think that the set piece stuff is exactly what this question's getting at, right? I mean, really, when you're evaluating a center back, having them be good on set pieces is great, attacking set pieces. But that's not necessarily what makes a center back. I think that's a nice to have. It's not a need to have at that spot. Maybe this is contrarian, and Graham, I'm curious what you think about this. I think kind of the answer to this is maybe not that he's gotten better at soccer in a dramatic sense, though he has in bits and spurts. I think it's just that he's playing soccer. He hadn't played more than 1,300 minutes in a top 5 league until 2 years ago. He played 2,000 minutes that season 2 years ago for Palace. Again, 2,000 minutes for the last year in the Premier League. I think part of his lack of minutes was because of being in club limbo. He wasn't good enough for Bayern, and there's no shame in that, but he wasn't. So he's in the loan army, and then eventually moves to Palace. It takes time to bed into that team. He's also playing at a higher level. Part of the delay, though, is also that Chris Richards was injured and has been injured quite a bit. So if we remember, I know this is almost 3 years. It's 3 years ago now, basically. It's more than that. He was starting games in World Cup qualifying for the U.S. ahead of the 2022 World Cup. Then he gets injured. Then he misses the end of World Cup qualifying. Then he misses the World Cup. He was going to play at that World Cup. He had that opportunity taken from him due to injury. I think this is my big picture takeaway on Richards. I think the talent has always been there. His opportunities, though, to consistently apply that talent weren't there until the last couple of years. And so that's why, as of a couple of years ago, we're thinking, okay, this guy needs to be playing every single minute of every single game for the U.S. And when he's played for the U.S., he's looked pretty good. To be truthful, I don't really remember thinking a couple of years ago that Richards wasn't quite there for the U.S. I think he's been the U.S.'s best center back for a good little while now. And I think now that we finally get to see that on a regular basis, it's become pretty clear to everybody that he has to be that player.
Yeah, and I think that consistency that you're talking about, Joe, has been clearest in his Palace performances rather than the US, because he has taken a leap forward for the US this year. I think he's taken a much bigger leap forward for Palace, and I think that maybe aligns with what you're saying, Joe, about consistency and playing more minutes and being comfortable in the environment. And obviously, with international soccer, you're not able to build up that consistency to the same level. He's also playing a slightly different role for the US, where he's playing in the centre of the back three, or he has in the last few games, or he's playing in a back four before the last kind of couple windows when it's been a back four. And for Palace, he's the right-sided centre back. And there's just, I think there's a clearer kind of distribution of responsibilities within that Palace back three, where Richards, and he's made gradual improvements in I think this season in particular, of playing out from the back, but Palace don't really need him to do that in the way that the US kind of do in that back three, so he can concentrate on his defensive basics. And that for me is where, for Palace anyway, that's where the biggest leap forward has happened. I think of his of Palace beating Man City in the FA Cup final last season, which for me is the best game I've ever seen him have. He made so many blocks and headers and tackles, and the way that Palace plays, that they allow him to be that player because they want to play into open space, so they don't play high up the pitch. And so Richards' qualities as a pure defender are allowed to shine through, and that's where he's made a big improvement. And the second thing I think he's improved, and the two things are linked, but the second thing I think he's improved is his positioning. I go back to the fabled Gradient Sports stat that I rolled out, I thought, when was that, like a month or two ago? I noticed Ryan O'Hanlon is now using Gradient in his writing, so I'm taking that as
trendsetter, Graham.
They're legit. But yeah, they say that, and I checked this again, they're still saying this, Richards is leading the Premier League for the fewest positional mistakes in the Premier League this season. Not clear what their methodology is, they keep that under wraps, but yeah, it lines up with the eye test, it lines up with what we're seeing from Richards in games. He has been a rock for Palace in 2025. And so I think a big part of why he has become, this isn't to deny the improvement that's happened for him for the US, I think he was good at the Gold Cup, he really stepped into a leadership role at the Gold Cup in the summer with so many other senior players missing, of course. I think he had a really good September camp, so I'm not trying to deny that improvement. But I think a big factor, or the biggest factor as to why we now see him as a lock, is because we see a guy who's widely regarded as one of the best centre-backs in the Premier League for a team that's on an upward trajectory, and there becomes a point where you just kind of can't deny giving that player, or building around that player, particularly when the other options in the pool around him is so weak.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I think another player who I think about as being on a similar trajectory, because the center back issue has been an issue for a while now, right? Where Richards comes in and finally it's a sigh of relief because there is a player who has real quality that you can mostly rely on in that spot, and the U.S. just doesn't have a lot of those players in any position, let alone in the middle of the back line, which is crucial. I do think Noki Banks is an even better prospect than Richards was at his age. And I remember, we talked about on the show, I think we were all high on Richards as a talent back when he was first coming through, getting minutes with Hoffenheim on loan. I remember he hit some absurd passes for Hoffenheim, even with his weak foot back when he was on loan in the Bundesliga. Banks is better. Banks is just a better prospect, and I think there's a very real chance that he turns out to be a better player. There's a lot of ground to be covered still between Banks and Richards, but so often we're grasping at straws for who the next player is for the U.S. in any given position. U17 World Cup's going on right now. Like you're digging deep into the youth national teams to find players worth watching and really spotlighting. We've talked a lot about Banks in the last few months. It's warranted because he is a better prospect than Richards, straight up, and I'm very excited to see what he turns into.
Good stuff. Thank you very much, Igor, for your question. That will round up USMNT Weekly. Taylor Rockwell, thank you very much indeed for your contributions, as always, my good man.
My pleasure, and thank you for your expert analysis of Chris Richards. I think it was on point.
It was on point indeed. I liked your the idea that his processing power's gotten a little better, and the decision making's better. On point too. And also, thank you for keeping And you kept the murder of crows delightfully silent during that recording, so thank you very much.
They've gone. I don't know where. I'm concerned. They're plotting something. They're up to something. I don't know.
Let me just
where
open the window here. Oh, God, they're here.
What window, Graham? Trick. It was a trick. Graham
Indeed,
Ruthven, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ryan Bailey.
And thank you, Joe Lowry.
Sorry, not sorry about the hex, Taylor. My fault.
Fair.
Listener, thank you very much for joining us on this episode. We'll be back on the feed very shortly indeed. But for now, bye.